The steak knife scraped against the plate, and my mother set her fork down with a deliberate click. The sound cut through the clatter of the birthday dinner like a blade. I watched her fold her napkin into a tight square, her knuckles white against the cream-colored linen. Across the table, my father kept his eyes fixed on his plate, carving his ribeye into smaller and smaller pieces, though he hadn't lifted a single one to his mouth. Your father, my mother said. Her voice pitched low enough that only our corner of the table could hear, has been very busy lately. My older brother, Mark, looked up from his phone. He was seated to my left, his tie already loosened, his second glass of wine half empty. He raised an eyebrow at me, and I shrugged, not knowing what she meant. My younger brother, David, sat on the other side of the table in his wheelchair, his hands resting motionless on the armrests. He had barely touched his food all evening. I'm just saying, my mother continued, reaching for her water glass. It's interesting, isn't it? How some people find the time to manage other people's affairs, but can't manage to show up on time for their own daughter's birthday. My father's knife paused mid-slice. He looked up then, his face a rueful mask of neutrality. Traffic was bad. Traffic, my mother repeated, tasting the word like something sour. At 3 in the afternoon. On a Saturday. Mark read his throat. Mom, let's just enjoy the dinner. It's Claire's birthday. My mother smiled at him, a tight, close-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course. Claire's birthday. The big 3-0. She turned to me, and her gaze softened, just a fraction. You look nice, sweetheart. Who picked out the dress? I did, I said. She nodded, as if confirming something she already suspected. Well, it's lovely. You have good taste when you put your mind to it. David wheeled himself closer to the table. Can we just eat? I'm starving. But my mother wasn't finished. She leaned toward my father, her voice dropping so low that only the three of us at the immediate table could hear. When no one is watching, she murmured, tell our son to change the locks on his appartement. I froze. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth, a piece of roasted potato dangling from the tines. I looked at Mark, but he was already pushing back his chair, his face unreadable. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the seat and walked toward the exit without a word. My father nodded once, a barely perceptible dip of his chin, and reached for his wine glass. David's eyes met mine across the table. His knuckles were white too. What was that about? I whispered. But my mother had already turned away, raising her glass to my aunt across the room, her laugh bright and brittle as chipped porcelain. My father read at the empty doorway where Mark had read, his jaw working slowly, as if he were chewing something tough and stringy. I excused myself to the restroom. In the hallway, the piano player was working through an old Billy Joel tune, the notes floating out from the main dining room like ghosts. I leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. My appartement. The one my father had helped me buy 3 years ago, the one in Eastbrook that was supposed to be my security, my nest egg, my piece of something that belonged only to me. The locks. Why would the locks need changing? When I returned to the table, Mark's chair was still empty. My mother was deep in conversation with my aunt, her gestures animated, her smile firmly in place. My father was cutting his steak into even tinier pieces. David was staring at his phone, his thumb scrolling absently. Where did Mark go? I asked, sliding back into my seat. Errand, my father said without looking up. What kind of errand? He set his knife down and finally met my gaze. His eyes were tired, the pouches underneath them darker than I remembered. Nothing for you to worry about. It's your birthday. Enjoy yourself. Dad, Claire. My mother's voice cut through, sharp and bright as glass. Your father said to enjoy yourself. Why don't you cut the cake? The waiters have been hovering for the last 10 minutes. I looked from her to my father and back again. The cake was wheeled out, a 3-tiered white confection with gold lettering that read, Happy 30th, Claire. Everyone sang. My mother's voice was the loudest, her smile the widest. I blew out the candles and made a wish that had nothing to do with luck or love or the next 30 hours. I wished that someone would tell me the truth. An hour passed. The cake was eaten. My aunt and uncle said their goodbyes. My cousins drifted off to the bar. My mother kept glancing at the door, her composure fraying at the edges. David had wheeled himself to the window and was staring out at the parking lot, his shoulders rigid. Then the door swung open. Mark stood there, pale as the tablecloth, his jacket slung over one arm. He walked slowly toward our table, his footsteps heavy on the carpet. My mother straightened in her chair. My father set down his coffee cup. I held my breath. Mark leaned down and pressed his lips to my mother's ear. His mouth moved, but I couldn't catch the words. I saw her face change, the color draining from her cheeks, her lips parting slightly. She set her hand on the table to steady herself. Mom. Mark whispered, his voice rang just enough for me to hear. Over there. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. What happened? Mark looked at him, then at me. There was something in his eyes I had never seen before, not anger, not sorrow, but something older and heavier, like the weight of a door that had been locked for too long and was finally swinging open. The appartement, Mark said, his voice rely above a whisper. It's not empty. My mother's wineglass tipped. Red liquid bled across her cream-colored dress, but she didn't look down. She kept her eyes fixed on Mark, her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Not empty, she repeated. What do you mean, not empty? Mark swallowed. There's someone living there. A woman. She opened the door in her bathrobe. She asked me what I wanted. My father sat back down heavily, his hand gripping the edge of the table. My mother's gaze slid to him, cold and precise. Whose appartement is that? She asked. Mine, I said, before anyone else could answer. But no one was listening to me. My mother was staring at my father, and my father was staring at the tablecloth, and Mark was standing between them like a messenger who knew the news would break something. Dad, Mark said quietly, she asked me if you'd sent me. She called you by your first name. The piano had stopped. The room felt like a held breath. My father looked up at me then, and for one terrible moment, I saw him clearly, not as my father, not as the man who had paid the down payment on my appartement, not as the man who had walked me to school and taught me how to drive, but as a stranger. A man who had secrets. A man whose phone buzzed at odd hours. A man who had told my brother to change the locks on a place that was supposed to be mine. I pushed back my chair and stood up. The legs scraped the floor, and the sound was loud and hot in the sudden silence. Dad, I said, and my voice came out steady. Who is she? The question hung in the air like smoke after a blown candle. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. My mother watched him with the stillness of a woman who had already decided what she was going to hear. Mark set his jacket down on the back of a chair. He looked wrung out, the way he used to look after all-nighters in law school, but worse. His hands were shaking. I didn't go inside, he said. She stood in the doorway. The place was furnished. Not like new furniture either, lived-in stuff. A couch with a throw blanket. Dishes in the drying rack. A pair of kids' sneakers by the door. My mother's grip tightened on the edge of the table. Kids. One pair. Small. Maybe size 11. David turned from the window. His face was hard to read, but his voice came out clipped and precise. You didn't ask who she was. Mark gave a short, bitter laugh. I asked. She said she was a friend of Dad's. Said he'd arranged the place for her. When I told her the appartement belonged to Claire, she got quiet. Then she said something I didn't understand at first. What? I asked. She said, tell him I can't move the heavy boxes myself. He'll have to come get them. My father's fork clattered onto his plate. The sound was loud enough that a few heads at NEARBY tables turned. He didn't seem to notice. He was staring at Mark with an expression I had never seen on him before, something between panic and resignation, like a man watching a wave he knew was going to hit. What boxes? I asked. Dad, what boxes? But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my mother, and she was looking back at him, and between them passed a whole conversation that didn't need words. I had seen that look before, in other families, in movies, in the moments before everything fell apart. But I had never seen it in my own home. My mother stood up. Her dress was stained with red wine, a dark bloom spreading across the front, but she didn't seem to see a re. She reached for her purse, slung it over her shoulder, and looked at my father with something cold and quiet in her eyes. "We're going," she said. "Right now." "Mom, Marksta rude. You stay here with your brother. Claire, you come with me." I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair. My legs felt uncertain, like they belonged to someone else. David wheeled himself toward the door, but my mother held up a hand. "Not you," she said. "You stay." David's jaw tightened. I saw the flash of hurt cross his face before he smoothed it away. He had always been the one my mother sheltered, the one she kept close and safe and away from the mess. But that same protection came with a price. He was always left behind. Mark put a hand on his brother's shoulder. "I'll tell you everything later." "I promise." David didn't answer. He just turned his chair back toward the window and read out at the darkening street, his reflection ghostly in the glass. My mother was already at the door. I followed her into the hallway, and my father followed me, his footsteps heavy and slow. The piano had root up again, something melancholy and minor key. I wanted to tell the player to stop, that this wasn't a soundtrack, that this was my life falling apart in real time. The parking lot was still and quiet. My mother walked to the car without looking back, her heels clicking against the asphalt like a countdown. I slid into the back seat, and my father got in beside me. Mark had given my mother his keys, and she drove, which was unusual. My father always drove. But tonight, he sat in the passenger seat with his hands on his knees, rings straight ahead. The drive to Eastbrook took 20 minutes. No one spoke. My mother gripped the steering wheel with both hands, her knuckles white, her jaw set. My father sat frozen beside her, a man who had run out of words. I pressed my forehead against the CL window and watched the streetlights blur past, each one a reminder that I had no idea where we were going or what we would find there. The apartment building was modest. 5 stories of red brick with a small lobby and a buzzing intercom. My mother parked in the visitor spot and got out without waiting for anyone. I followed her through the glass doors, past the mailboxes, into the elevator that smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet. 8th floor. The hallway was narrow, the lighting yellow and dim. My mother walked to the door marked 801 and stopped. She didn't knock. She just stood there, looking at the number plate, her hand raised, but not quite touching the wood. Then the door opened from the inside. The woman in the doorway was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with short brown hair and a face that had seen things. She wore a worn bathrobe over pajamas, and her feet were bare. She looked at my mother, then at my father, then at me. Her expression didn't change. "Figured you'd come," she said. "Come in." She stepped back, and my mother walked in. I followed, and my father came last, closing the door behind him like a man who was locking himself in a cage. The apartment was clean, but lived in, just as Mark had said. A brown couch with a knitted throw. A coffee table covered in magazines and a half-empty mug. A small desk in the corner with a laptop and a stack of papers. The kitchen was visible from the living room, and I could see a child's drawing taped to the refrigerator, a rainbow, a sun, a stick figure with pigtails. "Where's your daughter?" my mother asked. Her voice was calm, which was somehow worse than if she had been shouting. The woman crossed her arms. "Asleep. It's late. She's got school tomorrow." "How old?" "6. My mother absorbed this information like a punch to the stomach. I saw her shoulders drop a fraction, though her face stayed composed. She turned to my father, and her voice was quieter now, almost gentle. 6 years old, she said. "When did you meet her?" the woman answered before my father could. 5 years ago. I used to work at the same company. He was my manager. After my husband left, I had nowhere to go. Your husband helped me out. Found this place, made a few calls, got me the rent at a discount. That's all it was. That's all it was, my mother repeated flatly. That's all it was, the woman said. You don't have to believe me, but that's the truth. I looked at my father. He was standing by the door, his head bowed, his hands limp at his sides. He looked smaller than I remembered, shrunken somehow, as if the weight of the room was pressing down on him. Dad, I said, my voice breaking the silence. Why did you use my APA reprinting? Why not one of yours? Why not tell anyone? He raised his head and looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed, tired, older than they had been that morning. Because, he said, I thought if I used your name, she'd be harder to trace back to me. I thought I was protecting your mother. I thought I was protecting the family. From across the room, the woman let out a low laugh, dry and humorless. Protecting? That's a nice way to put it. My mother turned to her. What would you call it? The woman shrugged. I call it him being SCA red. He's always been SCA red. A view of what you'd think of what everyone would say. That's why he never told me your daughter owned the place. If I'd known, I would have said no. This is too much. This whole thing has gotten too complicated. She walked past us and opened the APA reprinting door. The hallway stretched out behind her, empty and quiet. You can look around, she said. Check closets, check drawers, check whatever you want. Then you can leave. I'm moving out at the end of the month anyway. I found a place closer to my daughter's school. Your husband knows about it. He was supposed to come get his boxes. I looked at my father again. He still hadn't moved from the doorway. What boxes? I asked. What's in them? The woman looked at me with something close to pity. You'd better ask him, she said. Because I sure don't know. I followed my mother into the bedroom first. The woman stood in the hallway with her arms crossed, watching us with a patience that felt almost RSCD. She didn't try to stop us, didn't offer explanations, just leaned against the wall like a bored security guard. The bedroom was small but orderly. A queen bed with a floral duvet. A dresser with a hairbrush and a bottle of hand lotion. A closet full of women's clothes and a few small dresses hanging at the end. My mother opened the closet doors, ran her hand along the hangers, checked the pockets of a coat that hung on the back of the door. She found nothing. She moved to the nightstand, opened the drawer, pulled out a stack of papers. Receipts, mostly. A lease agreement that had my father's signature at the bottom and a monthly payment amount that was, for the neighborhood, suspiciously low. The woman read in the doorway. I told you. He helped me out. My mother set the lease back in the drawer. Helped you out, she repeated. That's a funny way to phrase a business transaction. It wasn't a business transaction. It was a favor. The woman's voice had an edge now, the first crack in her composure. I was homeless. My ex-husband drained our bank account and read. I had a 5-year-old and $200 RS in my purse. I didn't need a landlord. I needed someone who would let me breathe. My mother turned to face her. The two women stood maybe 4 feet apart, and the space between them felt electric. And my husband was that someone. He was the only someone who picked up the phone. I backed out of the bedroom and walked to the closet in the hallway. The door was shut, and when I opened it, I saw them. Boxes, 6 of them, stacked too high. Plain brown Boe Road, sealed with packing tape, each one marked with a black marker in my father's handwriting. I recognized that handwriting from birthday cards and permission slips and grocery lists left on the kitchen counter. There was no label on the boxes except a number in the corner. 1 through 6. My father had followed me. He stood at the end of the hallway, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his shoulders hunched. I looked at him, and he looked at the boxes, and then his gaze slid away. What's in them? I asked. Old files, he said. Work stuff. My mother read beside me. She looked at the boxes, then at my father, and something in her face changed. It wasn't anger anymore. It was worse. It was certainty. Mark said she mentioned boxes. Heavy ones. He couldn't move them on his own. Her voice was flat, clinical, like she was reciting facts. If they're just files, why are they so heavy? My father didn't answer. He just stood there, a man who had run out of words. I knelt down and tried to lift the top box. It was heavy, heavier than I'd expected. I set it back down with a thud. The tape was thick and crisscrossed in multiple layers, as if whoever had sealed it didn't want it open. The woman came up behind us, her footsteps soft on the carpet. He said he'd pick them up months ago, she said. They've been sitting there since I moved in. I asked him to take them half a dozen times. He always said next week. My mother turned to my father with a look of slow, dawning comprehension. You used her for storage. You put your things in her closet and told her you'd come back for them, and you never did. You made her hold on to whatever is in those boxes so you'd have a reason to come back. So you'd keep coming back. No. My father's voice cracked. That's not, then what does it tell me? My mother stepped closer to him, and for a moment, she looked taller than I had ever seen her. What are you hiding in your daughter's apartment? In your daughter's closet, in this woman's closet, what is so important that you couldn't bring it home, couldn't store it in our basement, couldn't leave it at the office? My father opened his mouth. Closed it. His hands came out of his pockets, and I saw they were shaking. Mom, I said, maybe we should just open them. She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on my father, waiting. We're not opening anything, he said finally. His voice was quiet but firm, the first steady thing he had said all night. Those boxes have nothing to do with anyone in this room. They're personal. They're not yours. Claire's apartment, my mother said slowly, Claire's closet. I'd say that makes them hers. The woman stepped back, hands raised. I'm staying out of this. I just need them gone by the end of the month. Please. Take them or leave them, but take them out of my life. My father's jaw tightened. He looked at the boxes, at me, at my mother, and then at the woman. Something shifted behind his eyes, a calculation I couldn't follow. Fine, he said. I'll come back tomorrow with a truck and take them all. Every box. Every file. Everything. The woman nodded once. Thank you. My mother didn't move. She was still staring at my father with that cold, appraising look, the look of a woman who had just realized she had been living with a stranger for 30 hours. And then what? She asked quietly. You take the boxes. You put them somewhere else. You keep the secret, whatever it is. And we all pretend this never happened. My father's eyes met hers. That's exactly what I'm asking. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. My mother's hands were at her sides, fingers splayed, as if she was physically holding herself back. I watched her chest rise and fall, and I realized she was counting. 1 breath. 2. 3. When she finally spoke, her voice was level again. All right, she said. Tomorrow. We'll all come. We'll watch you load them up, we'll watch you take them wherever you're taking them, and then we'll be done with this. My father nodded. He looked relieved, and that relief made my stomach turn. I stepped closer to the boxes and ran my fingers along the tape on the top one. Underneath the Ca Boe Road, I felt something hard and ungulaire, like the edge of a book or a frame. 6 boxes. 6 mysteries. 6 reasons my father had kept me out of my own apartment for 3 hours. Dad, I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it was. What happens if I decide not to wait until tomorrow? His face went pale. The woman's eyebrows lifted. My mother turned and looked at me, and for the first time that night, I saw something like approval flicker across her face. You wouldn't, my father said. Claire. Please. Let's do this the right way. I pulled my hand away from the box. The tape was right there, begging to be cut, begging to be peeled back. But my father's eyes were on me, pleading, and I had never seen him plead before. Not with my mother. Not with anyone. It was unsettling in a way that made me step back. Tomorrow, I said. But I'm picking where they go. My father showed up at the apartment building at 8 the next morning with a rented truck. My mother and I arrived 15 minutes later, separately, because she had refused to ride in the same car with him. Mark came too, his face still pale from the night before, and David had insisted on coming even though my mother had tried to leave him behind. He had rolled his wheelchair out to the car and parked himself in front of the door until she gave in. The 4 of us stood in the parking lot watching my father lower the tailgate of the truck and pull out a hand truck. The woman was already gone. She had left EARLY with her daughter, the apartment door unlocked and the boxes waiting in the hallway. She didn't want to see us, she had said in a text to my father that morning. She had already done enough. My father had shown me the message on his phone, a brief exchange with no emotion in it, Just logistics. I had read it and handed the phone back without comment. The appointment felt different in the morning light. The windows faced east and the sun poured in, making the worn furniture look shabbier than it had the night before. The child's drawing was still taped to the refrigerator, but the mug had been washed and put away. The place had the hollow feel of a home already half-packed. My father went straight to the closet. He pulled out the top box, set it on the floor, and looked at the rest of us with an expression that walked the line between exhaustion and resignation. I'll load them. You don't have to help. Mark stepped forward anyway. I'll carry. You push. They worked in silence for the first few minutes. My mother stood in the living room, arms crossed, watching. David had rolled his chair into the kitchen and was staring at the child's drawing on the refrigerator, his face unreadable. I went to the bedroom, the one with the floral duvet and the empty dresser drawers, and I opened the closet again. The woman's clothes were gone, only a few wire hangers clinking together. But on the top shelf, tucked behind a folded blanket, I found something. A photograph. Small, wallet-sized, creased down the middle. It was a picture of the woman, younger and smiling, with her arms around a man I didn't recognize. And behind them, in the background, was my father. He was at a table with a drink in his hand, laughing at something, his tie loosened and his shirt untucked. It was a casual picture, the kind you take at a company party or a weekend barbecue. But the date stamped on the back was from 6 years ago. I slid the photo into my pocket and went back to the living room. My father and Mark had loaded 3 boxes onto the hand truck and were maneuvering it through the doorway. David rolled out of the kitchen and stopped beside me. Find something? He asked quietly. Maybe, I said. I don't know yet. The 4th box was heavier than the others. Mark grunted as he lifted it, and my father steadied it with both hands. I watched them carry it past me, and I saw my mother's eyes track the box from the closet to the door, her jaw tight. 6 boxes, she said. 6 reasons you couldn't tell me the truth. My father paused in the doorway, the box balanced on the hand truck. They're not reasons. They're things. Just things. Things you couldn't bring home. Things you couldn't talk about. Things you hid in our daughter's appointment. She shook her head slowly. I don't know what you think I would have done if you'd told me, but I promise you, it's worse than whatever I'm doing now. He didn't answer. He just pushed the hand truck out into the hallway, and Mark followed, and the 2 of them disappeared around the corner to the elevator. I walked to the closet where the boxes had been stacked. The last 2 were still there, and I noticed something I hadn't seen the night before. The tape on box 5 was loose, peeling up at one corner as if someone had opened it and tried to reseal it. I knelt down and pulled at the flap. The tape gave way easily. Inside were file folders. Old ones, the kind with worn edges and faded labels. I pulled one out and opened it. Receipts. Decades old, all made out to my father for things I didn't recognize. A payment to a medical clinic. A withdrawal from a savings account. A letter from a lawyer, typed and formal, with a name I had never seen before. David rolled up beside me. What is it? Old papers, I said. Financial stuff, mostly. But there's a name here. Whose? I read the letter again, my eyes scanning the small print. The name at the top was Russ Webb. The letter was from a law firm, dated 15 years ago, and it mentioned something about paternity and child support and a settlement that had been paid in full. My hands root to shake. Claire, David said. What is that? I closed the folder and put it back in the box. The tape was loose anyway. My father would know someone had opened it. I had to decide right then whether I was going to confront him or wait. Mark came back into the appointment. He looked at me kneeling by the box, at the loose tape, and his face went through a series of quick changes. Claire. Don't. Don't what? I asked. Don't do this here. Not like this. He came over and crouched beside me. I saw his face when he loaded those boxes. He's SCA red. I've never seen him SCA red like that. Just wait until we get them somewhere else. Give him a chance to explain. My mother had heard the exchange. She walked over and stood looking down at me, at the open flap of the box, at the folder I had put back. Her mouth tightened. Explain, she said. That's funny. Your father hasn't explained a single thing in 15 years. Mom, Mark said, please. No. She knelt down beside me, slower than Mark had, her knees cracking with the movement. Claire, you found something. What is it? I reached into the box and pulled out the letter again. I handed it to her, and she read it silently, her lips moving slightly as she went through the words. When she finished, she closed her eyes. Her hand holding the letter dropped to her side. Unauthorized Web, she said. I know that name. My father read in the doorway. He had come back for the last 2 boxes, and he stopped when he saw us kneeling around box 5, the tape loose, the letter in my mother's hand. The color drained from his face. Ka ran, he said, let me explain. My mother stood up slowly. She walked toward him, the letter still in her hand, and stopped a foot away. 15 years ago, she said, you told me Unauthorized Web was just a colleague. A man you worked with. He had some trouble, you helped him out, and then he moved away. That's what you told me. I told you what I could, my father said. You told me what you wanted me to hear. She held up the letter. This says you were ordered by a court to pay child support for a child that was not yours. And it says you paid it. In full. 15 years ago. Who was that child, Robert? Who did you pay for? The room was silent. Mark had stopped breathing. David's hands were frozen on the wheels of his chair. I watched my father's face crumble, the mask of control finally slipping away. The letter has a name, my mother continued. But I want to hear it from you. Whose child did you pay for? My father looked at me, then at David, then back at my mother. His voice, when it finally came, was a whisper. Liam, he said. The boy's name was Liam. The name hung in the air like a held breath. Liam. I had never heard it before, not once in 30 years of family dinners and holiday gatherings and late-night conversations at the kitchen table. My mother read at my father as if he had just spoken a language she didn't recognize. Mark straightened up slowly, his hands falling away from the box he had been about to lift. David's wheelchair made a small creak as he shifted his weight, the only sound in the room. Liam, my mother repeated. The name came out flat, colorless. Who is Liam? My father stood in the doorway with the light from the hallway behind him, his face half in shadow. He looked old suddenly, older than I had ever seen him, the lines around his eyes read deep and dark. He took a step into the apartment and let the door close behind him. The click of the latch was final, like a lock turning. Liam was a boy I met through work, he said. His mother worked in the same building, different floor. She had a lot of problems. Her husband left. She had no family nearby. She was struggling to keep a roof over their heads. I helped her out a few times. Nothing major. A ride home. A small loan. Then she got sick. My mother's hand tightened on the letter. Sick how? Cancer. The word came out like a stone dropped into still water. It moved fast. She didn't have insurance, didn't have savings, didn't have anyone to take the boy. So I stepped in. I paid for some of her treatment. I made sure the rent was covered. And when she died, I made sure Liam had a place to go. A place to go, my mother said. Her voice was rising now, the rueful composure cracking at the edges. A place to go. Like a foster home. Like an orphanage. What kind of place, Robert? My father's jaw worked. He swallowed hard, and I could see his throat move. I had a friend from college. He ran a group home. A good one. I paid for Liam to stay there. I paid for his school, his clothes, his medical bills. I paid for everything he needed, from the time he was 8 years old until he turned 18. How much? I asked. The words came out before I could stop them. How much money did you spend on this boy? My father looked at me, and there was something raw in his eyes. Every penny I could spare. And some I couldn't. My mother walked to the window. She stood with her back to us, her shoulders rigid, her reflection ghostly in the glass. 15 years, she said. You gave away money to a stranger for 15 years, money we could have used for the mortgage, for David's medical bills, for Claire's tuition. His mother had a name, my father said quietly. Her name was Laura. And Liam wasn't a stranger. He was a child. ASCA read, alone, grieving child who had no one. Mark stepped four-way road. He had been silent, but I could see the HARS turning in his head. You told us you worked overtime. You told us you were putting in extra hours to cover MARK's grad school. You told Mom the bonuses were drying up. You lied. I protected you, my father said. All of you. I thought if I told you the truth, you would try to talk me out of it. And I wasn't going to be talked out of it. My mother turned from the window. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, but her voice had gone quiet again. That quiet was worse than shouting. What happened to Liam after he turned 18? My father's shoulders sagged. He moved out. Got a job. Went to community college for a while. I lost touch with him after a few years. I tried to find him once, but the group home had closed, and the records were gone. I don't know where he is now. You never told us, I said. You never said a word. Not even when we asked about the bonuses. Not even when Mom was worried about the bills. You just let us believe you were working yourself to death for us, and you were working for someone else. I was working for what was right, my father said. His voice cracked on the last word. Laura was dying. She asked me to take care of her son. She made me promise. And I made a promise. David rolled his chair four-way RD until he was directly in front of our father. He looked up at him, his face unreadable, his hands still on the wheels. You kept that promise for 10 years, he said. But you never told any of us. Did you think we would stop loving you if we knew? My father's eyes glistened. He blinked rapidly, looking away. I thought you would stop understanding. There's a difference. Was there a picture? My voice cut through the room. In one of those boxes, was there a picture of him of Liam? My father nodded slowly. In the bottom of the fourth box. A small frame. His school photo from 5th grade. I walked to the hand truck. The fourth box was still sitting there waiting. I pulled at the tape, my fingers working quickly, and lifted the lid. Inside, on top of a stack of old receipts and medical bills, was a silver frame. The glass was dusty, but the face inside was clear. A boy with dark hair and a gap-toothed smile, wearing a blue polo shirt and a school ID tag around his neck. He had my father's eyes. The same shade of brown, the same slight crinkle at the corners. I held the frame up, and Mark came over to look. David rolled closer. My mother stayed by the window. His mother, I said, turning to my father. Laura. Was she the one who had the affair with you? Is that why you felt so responsible? My father shook his head too fast. No. No, she was just a colleague. A friend. Nothing more. I swear to you on everything I have, there was nothing between us. My mother let out a breath. It wasn't a sigh. It was something raw, something that had been trapped for a long time. Then why? Robert, why did you go to such lengths for her son? He looked at her, and for the first time that morning, his eyes held steady. Because she was alone. Because no one else would help. Because I looked at that 8-year-old boy and I saw David at the same age, SCA red and sick and waiting for someone to show up. And I couldn't walk away. David's hands dropped from the wheels. His face had gone very still. My mother closed her eyes and pressed her hand to her mouth. So that's it, Mark said slowly. That's the whole story. You paid for a stranger's kid for 15 years, you kept it secret, and now you've got nothing left to show for it. My father looked at him. I've got a clear conscience, he said. That's more than most people can say. I set the silver frame back in the box and closed the lid. My hands were trembling, but my voice was steady when I spoke. You kept this from us. You kept this from Mom. You used my APA to store boxes of secrets that you couldn't bring home because you knew she would find them. He didn't deny it. He just nodded, a small, defeated nod. And the woman, I continued. The one who lives here. Did you help her for the same reason? My father looked at me, and the mask slipped back into place. That's a different story. But I saw it in his eyes. The evasion. The CA rifle distance. And I knew in that moment that there was more. There was always more. The truck sat in the parking lot with the 6 boxes loaded and the tailgate closed. My father leaned against the driver's side door with his arms crossed, waiting for us to finish whatever we needed to finish. But none of us were finished. Not really. My mother had walked to the FAR end of the lot, her phone pressed to her EAR, her back to all of us. Mark stood by the appartement building entrance, scrolling through his phone without really looking at it. David had stayed in the appartement, and I found him in the kitchen, sta ring at the refrigerator where the child's drawing had been taped. The drawing was still there. The woman had left it behind, a rainbow arched over a house with a crooked chimney, a stick-figure girl with pigtails, and a son with a smiley face. David reached out and touched the corner of the paper, his fingers gentle. She left this, he said. On purpose. She wanted someone to find it. Maybe she forgot. He shook his head. She didn't forget. Look. He pointed to the bottom corner of the drawing, where someone had written in serif cursive, "For the nice man who helped us." The handwriting was small and neat, the letters slightly uneven, as if written by a child trying very hard to be precise. Who's the nice man? I asked. David shrugged. I think we both know. I pulled the drawing off the refrigerator and folded it serifully into my pocket. David watched me, his face unreadable. You're keeping it, I don't know. Something about it feels important. He wheeled himself toward the door, and I followed. Outside, the sun had climbed higher, burning off the last of the morning haze. My mother was still on the phone at the FAR end of the lot, her hand gestures sharp and agitated. My father hadn't moved from the truck. Mark had finally looked up from his phone and was walking toward me. She's calling the lawyer, he said. The family one. The one who handled the wills. Now. She doesn't want to wait. Mark's voice was flat, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over, the one who said, let's all just calm down. But there was no calming down today. Today was the day the dam broke. My father pushed off from the truck and walked toward us. His steps were slow, deliberate, like a man approaching a negotiation he knew he was going to lose. I'm taking the boxes to storage, he said. I got a unit rented last night. You can all ride with me if you want. I don't want, my mother said. She had ended her call and was walking back toward us, her heels clicking on the asphalt. I want to see what's in those boxes. Every single one. I want to know if there's anything else you've been hiding for the last 15 years. Don't run me. She stopped in front of him, close enough that I could see the pulse beating in her throat. I just found out my husband paid child support for a stranger's child and never told me. I found out my daughter's appartement was being used as a storage locker for secrets. I found out that a woman and a child have been living in a place that was supposed to belong to my family. And now you're telling me there's a storage unit. More boxes, more things I don't know about. My father held her gaze. There's nothing else. The boxes are what they are, old files. Records. Some personal things from Laura. That's all. And the woman, the one with the 6-year-old daughter, my mother's voice had gone cold again, that terrible calm that made everything worse. What's her connection to all of this? My father looked away. For a moment, he seemed to shrink, his shoulders curving. INWA Road. Her name is Diane. She used to be married to Russ Webb. The name landed like a bomb. Russ Webb. The name on the letter. The man whose child support had been paid by my father. My mother's face went white. Russ Webb, she repeated slowly. The man whose child you supported. My father nodded. He was a bad man, Ran. He left Laura when she was sick. He left Diane and her daughter too, a few years later. Same pattern. Same story. Diane was struggling, just like Laura, and she reached out to me because someone told her I had helped before. I couldn't say no. Mark stepped forward, his voice tight. You couldn't say no, that's your answer. You rented Claire's appartement to her. You kept her presence a secret. You covered it all up. Because you couldn't say no. Diane had nowhere to go, my father said. She had a 5-year-old daughter and a husband who had drained her bank account and disapparated. She came to me because I was the only person she knew who had helped someone else in her situation. So you helped her, I said. You helped her the same way you helped Laura. And you kept it secret the same way. And you put her in my appartement, under my name, without asking me. My father turned to me. There were TRS in his eyes, and that made my chest ache in a way I didn't expect. I know I should have asked you. I know I should have told all of you. But I was SCA red. I was SCA red of what you would think. I was SCA red of what it would do to this family. And I kept telling myself I would find the right time, and the right time never came. My mother laughed. It was a hollow, brittle sound. The right time. You kept saying that for 15 years. For 15 years, Robert. You lied to us every single day. Every time you came home late, every time you looked at your phone, every time I asked about your bonus. You lied. I was trying to protect people. You were trying to protect yourself, she shot back. You were trying to be the hero without having to face the consequences. And now here we are. Here we are with 6 boxes of secrets and a storage unit and a woman and a child living in our daughter's apartment and a dead woman named Laura and a boy named Liam who you paid for and never told us about. David had wheeled himself out of the building. He stopped beside me, his voice quiet but steady. Mom. He made a mistake. A lot of mistakes. But he did it for the right reasons. You can't fault him for trying to take care of people. My mother looked at David, and something in her face softened for just a moment. Then she turned back to my father. You could have taken care of people without lying to me. You could have told me the truth, and we could have figured it out together. But you didn't. You chose to CARRY it all yourself. And now I don't know how to put the pieces back together. My father reached for her hand. She let him take it, but she didn't squeeze back. She just stood there, still and quiet, looking at the man she had been married to for 35 years. Let's go to the storage unit, she said finally. Let's see what else you've been CARYing alone. He nodded, and we all walked back to the truck. The boxes shifted in the back as we drove, and I sat in the middle seat between David and my mother, the folded drawing of the rainbow and the stick figure girl pressing against my thigh through the fabric of my pocket. 6 boxes. 15 years. 1 dead woman. 1 lost boy. 1 family trying to figure out how to start telling the truth. The storage unit was in a strip mall on the edge of town. A long row of identical roll-up doors painted the same shade of industrial beige. My father pulled the truck up to Unit 47 and got out without saying a word. He fumbled with the padlock, his fingers clumsy, and when the door rolled up, the light from outside spilled into a space that smelled of dust and old Bois Road. The unit was small, maybe 10 by 10, and it was almost empty. A single table sat against the back wall, and on it was a box. 1 box, smaller than the others, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. My father walked to the table and stood there, his hand hovering over the box like a man afraid to touch something sacred. My mother stepped into the unit behind him. Her heels echoed on the concrete floor. Is this it? This is what you rented the storage unit for? My father nodded. He untied the twine and peeled back the paper. Inside was a wooden box, polished and dark, with a brass latch. He opened it, and I saw what was inside. Photographs. Dozens of them, stacked in neat piles. A man I didn't recognize, young and smiling, with his arm around a woman who was clearly Laura. The same woman from the picture in the apartment, but younger, her hair longer, her face unlined. In some of the photos, the man and woman were holding a baby. In others, the baby had grown into a toddler, then a boy, then a teenager with my father's eyes. That's Liam, my father said softly. That's his father, Marcus. And Laura. Mark came up behind me and peered over my shoulder. Marcus Webb. The same Marcus Webb from the letter, the same, my father said. He was a good man when I met him. A colleague. A friend. But something changed in him. He got into gambling, then debt, then he route running. He left Laura when Liam was 3. She was already sick, and he just walked away. My mother picked up one of the photographs. It was a school picture of Liam at about 12, his hair gelled back, his smile tentative. You stayed in touch with him, even after he left. My father nodded. He called me once, maybe 2 years after he disappeared. He was in another state, in trouble again, and he asked for money. I gave it to him. I thought maybe if I helped him, he would come back and take care of his son. But he never did. David had wheeled himself to the table. He reached up and took the photograph from my mother's hand, studying it in silence. His face was hard to read, but I saw his jaw tighten. "He looks like me," he said quietly. "When I was that age." My father's eyes widened. He looked at David, then at the photograph, then back at David. His mouth opened and closed. "It's just a coincidence," Mark said quickly. "Lots of kids look alike." But I saw it too. The same dark hair, the same shape of the jaw, the same way the eyes crinkled at the corners. It was unsettling, like looking at a ghost. My mother set the photograph down. Her hands were trembling. "Robert, is there something else you need to tell us about David?" The silence that followed was the heaviest I had ever felt. My father's face went pale, then red, then pale again. He looked at my mother, then at David, then at all of us, and I saw the exact moment he made a decision. "No," he said. "There's nothing else. David is our son. He was born to us, raised by us, and nothing in these boxes changes that." My mother studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "All right. I believe you." David set the photograph back in the box. His face was still unreadable, but his hands were steady. "We should go home," he said. "We've been here long enough." My father closed the wooden box and wrapped it back in the brown paper. "I'm going to keep this," he said. "The photographs. The memories. I want Liam's son to have them someday, if he ever comes looking." "You never found him?" I asked. My father shook his head. "He dropped off the grid a few years after he turned 18. I hired a private investigator once, but the trail went cold. I don't know if he's alive or dead. I don't know if he ever knew I paid for his education, his food, his clothes. I just know I made a promise to his mother, and I kept it." We loaded the wooden box into the truck with the others. The drive home was quiet, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows and heating the vinyl seats. My mother sat in the front, her hand resting on the armrest between her and my father. It wasn't quite holding his hand, but it was close. Back at the house, we unloaded the 6 boxes into the garage. My mother opened each one methodically, sorting through receipts and letters and old photographs with the precision of a woman who had spent a lifetime organizing other people's messes. She found nothing else surprising. Just the records of a man who had quietly given away a small fortune to people who needed it more than he did. David and I sat on the back steps while the sun went down. He was quiet for a long time, staring at the RD, his hands resting on the wheels of his chair. "Do you think he ever did it for the wrong reasons?" he asked. "Helped people, I mean." "I don't know," I said. "I think he did it because he couldn't stop himself. Some people rebuilt that way. Mom's never going to trust him the same way again." "No," I agreed. "But I think she's going to try." My father came out of the house with 2 glasses of lemonade. He handed one to David and one to me, then sat on the step beside David's chair. For a while, none of us spoke. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry I used your reprinting. I'm sorry for all of it." David took a sip of his lemonade and said nothing. I watched the ice melt in my glass, the water turning cloudy and slow. "You can stay," I said. "At the reprinting, I mean. After the woman moves out, you can have it. She's leaving at the end of the month, and I don't need it right now. You've been wanting a place with a ramp for years." My father looked at me with something like wonder. "Claire, I can't. That's your reprinting. It's a place," I said. "And you need a place. We'll figure out the details later." David smiled, a small and tired smile. "That's a pretty good birthday present, even if it's a few days late." I laughed, and the sound surprised me. "Next year, I'm asking for a gift." CA Road. My mother came out and stood in the doorway, watching the 3 of us. She had changed out of her stained dress and was wearing an old CA digan, her hair pulled back. She looked tired, but there was a softness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Supper's almost ready," she said. "I made that chicken you like, Claire. The one with the rosemary." I stood up and walked toward the door. My father followed, and David wheeled himself up the ramp we had built for him years ago. My mother held the door open, and as I passed her, she touched my arm. "You did good today," she said. "All of you did." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The sun was almost down, and the kitchen smelled like Rosema Re and Ga Relic and something that felt almost like home. There was still a lot to fix, a lot to talk about, a lot of trust to rebuild. But the boxes were in the GA rage, the secrets were out, and for the first time in 15 years, my father wasn't CA-ing anything alone.